Here's the car, more or less, as I drove it into the shop.
It was fun while it lasted, but I'm broken down.
And it was at that moment that crazy Casey's Crown Victoria swap budget went right out the window. Hey folks, Casey here and welcome back to the channel. This is my Crown Victoria chassis, finally ready for installation of a 1958 Ford F-100 pickup cab. If you're going to build one of these projects, you have to make the decision of what type of donor vehicle to use. The Police Interceptor is an excellent choice. They used to be available a dime a dozen. They're getting a little bit harder to find in good shape these days. But the Police Interceptor package does come with some drawbacks, namely higher mileage and sometimes a little bit more abuse. Those cars sit and idle for hours on end. So even if you get one with 150,000 original miles or 200,000 original miles, they've sat there and idled for 200,000 miles. They get ridden hard and put away wet. Another option is to go with a civilian Crown Victoria like I did. But know that if you're trying to build a hot rod, you're giving up a lot of performance with the civilian model. The chassis you see here started life as a 2005 Crown Victoria LX. It was kind of the grandpa special, had 119,000 original miles, had power everything and every option under the sun. It's in beautiful shape. The chassis itself looks brand new, you'll see in the video. It was well maintained and well taken care of. And again, low mileage. This was an excellent starting point. But here's a couple of drawbacks of the civilian model. 219 horsepower instead of 250 horsepower. The cop models got better equipment all the way around. Better shocks, better springs, better drive shaft, better transmission, better engine tune, better airbox, better exhaust system, better rear ends, you name it. They had better parts. So I've had to do a little bit to this one to get it up to that Police Interceptor spec and even beyond to make it a fitting donor chassis for my 1958 Ford F-100 hot rod pickup project. And this thing will be pretty sweet. Another interesting aspect of this build is that I actually took this up to the school where I teach high school auto shop and let my students take the car apart. I figured that the opportunity to take a car completely apart is a pretty rare one for a high school kid, and I figured it would be a pretty formative experience for them. But that said, I'm not able to film them and have them on my channel, so a lot of that I just kind of did updates for the beginning part of tearing down this chassis. I still think it ended up being some pretty good content, so stay tuned for that. Okay, so without further ado, let's get into everything that's involved in prepping your Crown Victoria donor chassis for an F-100 swap project, because there's a lot to it. All right, here's the car, more or less, as I drove it into the shop on the first day of disassembly. We pretty immediately pulled the hood, took off the front bumper, and started to take off some of the crash damage parts that were on this car. That's the whole reason I ended up with it for $800 in the first place. Here we go, we're tearing into it.
All right, so here we are at the end of day one. Get the entire front end apart. All four doors removed. I did it the hard way and I pulled out all the internal door wiring. I'm not sure why. I guess because that's how you're supposed to do it, but for what I'm doing, it was just extra work. We got the trunk lid off. Yeah. Anyway, that's day one. All right, and here we are at the end of day two. The interior is fully out, and my students were a little bit eager, so even though all they had was a hacksaw, they've started to cut the roof off.
And here we are at the end of day three. And in keeping with the budget, I need to drive this thing out of here because I don't have room in the budget for a tow. Will it still run? It's mostly downhill.
All right, well, it was fun while it lasted, but I'm broken down. I'm showing very low battery voltage all of a sudden, so I'm not sure if something shorted out or what. The fuel pump inertia switch had triggered and it shut the engine off, and I was coasting with the battery on coming down the hill because I didn't want to shut the ignition off and accidentally lock the steering. I'm gonna try to jump it and go from there. All right, so 2005 Ford Crown Victoria. No keys in the ignition. Everything is off. See my fuel gauge? I'm gonna press the brake pedal. Yeah.
Rip. I thought you said it would just light him right off. Did it fix itself? You got traction control on? Yeah. Turn that off. All right. Turn them into smoke. There we go.
And it was at that moment that crazy Casey's Crown Victoria swap budget went right out the window. If you guys couldn't tell, I ponied up and I bought a set of Cook's stainless steel long tube headers for the Crown Vic chassis. I knew I wanted to have headers on this thing. I knew I wanted to run a full exhaust. I wanted to run a full stainless exhaust. I was really hoping that those Flash Arc Chinese headers were going to work. They are not. So this is what I'm doing. I've got Cook's headers from Summit Racing Equipment. I've got a set of used Pipes Race Pro mufflers off of Facebook Marketplace. I paid $100 for the mufflers, which is pretty darn cheap. Those are nice mufflers for $100 for a pair. I've got a Summit X pipe. I've got some Walker Dyno Max collectors that sort of fit the Cook's headers. I've got some Summit aluminized tubing. I've actually got a whole lot more than that. I got about 490s, 245s, the X's. I should be able to make all of this happen. And it's going to sound amazing. Thinning out the Crown Vic stock wiring harness seems daunting. This is the pile of wires that I've already eliminated. It seems daunting, but the truth of the matter is the Crown Vic doesn't actually need that much to run. I'm leaving most of the front harness alone, completely untouched. Inside the body, you're going to need your fuse block. You're going to need your big plugs that go to the outer harness. You're going to need your brake pedal and your throttle pedal just back there. You're going to need your ignition. You're going to need your fuel pump driver and your inertia switch. I'm choosing to leave all of the ABS components. I'm choosing to leave the wiring for the lights, the lighting control module, and even the radio and speakers. You're going to need your 3 connections on both sides of the dash that connect to the rear harnesses. And like I said, I'm leaving most of what's in the front alone.
So basically what you do is you find the systems that you're not going to use, and then you just eliminate them from the harness. So like, for example, this is the connector to my clock spring. The clock spring is going to be the airbag, and it's also going to be the steering wheel controls. So cruise control and like radio volume and stuff like that. I'm not going to have steering wheel controls, so this can be eliminated. Basically what you do is you take these wires and you just basically start to push them through the harness, and then you trace them out to wherever they go. If they end up in a connector, you depin them from the connector. A lot of the wires in the Crown Vic end up in these merges where several wires come together. Clip the wire, fold the unused end in, or cap it with a butt connector. Check your work regularly to make sure the car still runs. These are the ignition wires. Last night, I had this thing running off of the 1958 F-100 ignition switch. 2005 Crown Vic LX only. This is gonna be completely useless if you're working on anything else. Your accessory wire is gonna be white with the purple. Your ignition wires are gonna be white with the blue, purple with the orange, and gray with the yellow. Your battery supply voltage is gonna be the pink and the green with the purple. And then your starter relay trigger is gonna be this teal wire here. You can hook those right up to the F-100 ignition switch. Before you cut the connector off, plug the connector in, back probe it in all the positions to see what's what. All right, so if you're debating about whether or not to start with a Police Interceptor or a civilian model Crown Victoria, this is the Police Interceptor airbox. This is the civilian model. You can see right away, the Police Interceptor airbox maintains a constant diameter going into the mass airflow sensor, whereas the civilian model necks down significantly. I'm gonna guess this is about 2 3/4 inches. That's about 3.5 inches. The civilian model also has several baffles to quiet the intake noise down, and just past the mass airflow sensor, the tube is filled with like a honeycomb type material, probably for the purpose of reducing sound as well, but it's also gonna slow down airflow. So Police Interceptor intake for the win. Moving on, we talked about the Cook's long tube headers into a true dual exhaust system, X-pipe into a pair of pipes, 3-inch Race Pro mufflers. This should definitely help performance a little bit. The Police Interceptor drive shaft is aluminum. It is also a little bit shorter, so you do have to come up with a drive shaft spacer to run that, but that's gonna be more power transfer to the rear wheels. And now that guy there. Most civilian models are gonna come with this axle code C8, which is a 273 open differential. This is a junkyard 8.8 out of a 2008 Crown Vic Police Interceptor, but there's nothing special about it, except for the 31 spline axles that come in the later models. While I was there, I also grabbed this 31 spline 8.8 traction lock differential. This came out of a Ford Explorer, and in a different Ford Explorer, I was able to find a 373-to-1 gear set. All right, so while I was doing the rear gears, I went ahead and installed the Police Interceptor rear sway bar. And you guys might think I'm a dork here,
but I went ahead and used the oil information and diff information tags off of the Explorer that the gears and traction lock came out of. I went ahead and installed the Police Interceptor driveshaft, which is aluminum. I went a little bit different route than most people do. ADTR makes a driveshaft spacer billet aluminum. I made my own. It's a little bit longer than ADTR's. ADTR also recommends using the civilian yoke instead of the Police Interceptor yoke. I actually shortened the Police Interceptor yoke so it fits on the civilian transmission. I used ARP M12 hardware. This thing is piloted to the 2-inch driveshaft flange. I think it came out pretty sweet. As I joked in the video, my budget did kind of go right out the window. I've got about $3,000 into this chassis as it sits right now. That's the purchase price of the Crown Victoria, all of the performance parts that I added to it, minus the parts that I was able to sell from the original car. I probably spent closer to $4,000, but I've got about $3,000 in it as it sits because I'm counting what I'm selling at the same time. You don't have to do stainless long tube headers. That was $1,200 of the cost right there. The Marty tune adds significant cost, but it's well worth it. That will take this from 219 horsepower and throwing check engine lights everywhere because of the mods to hopefully making about, I'm gonna assume about 270 and hopefully not having any check engine lights, though we'll see. 373 gears, aluminum drive shaft, those are just kind of nice to have things, but a hot rod should light up both tires. The Police Interceptor airbox, I've heard, is actually where a lot of the performance comes from on the Police Interceptor models. Well, I guess we're gonna find out, aren't we? All right, folks, thank you so much for watching this week. I hope you're as excited as I am to see the F-100 cab sitting on this chassis. Be sure you smash that like button if you like what you saw in today's video. Let me know in the comments what you're most excited about seeing in this project. Do you like the idea of starting with a lower mileage civilian model Crown Victoria and adding the necessary Police Interceptor parts to build a hot rod? Or do you think it would be better off to start with the Police Interceptor chassis first? Does it really just come down to what you find for what kind of price? Hopefully within the next week or two, I'll have some content out showcasing what it takes to get the cab sitting on this chassis. All right, thank you so much for following along, and we'll see you on the next one.